Hey, what's going on, everyone? GoodMicWork commentaries back at you. Just want to chime in real quick at the beginning of this video and let you know that this is kind of a re-upload. Many of you might not even realize that this is a re-upload because when I did this review last year, it only lasted on YouTube for about a month, and WWE took it down. Some footage got flagged in it, and I just kind of put it off, re-uploading it. I meant to a long time ago, never really got around to it, and a few months ago I thought to myself, well, I'll just wait until Survivor Series time again this year, and I'll give you the re-upload along with a few other retro reviews so I can give you some Survivor Series related content in the month of November. But this re-upload is ready to go now, so I figured I'd get it to you a little bit early. I've been letting you guys know in recent videos that I do plan to pick back up the retro and classic pay-per-view reviews. I've really missed doing those, and I've got a few for you planned throughout the end of the year. You've got Halloween Havoc 1998 coming up here on the channel in just a few days, so keep a lookout for that. I've got Survivor Series 2001 on the calendar for the month of November because that was a show that I attended live, and I was smack dab in the middle of the hard cam during the whole show, and I have a lot of memories about that show. So it's a review that I've wanted to do for quite some time. I'm going to plan some fun reviews for the month of December as well, and hopefully it will be a segment that will be much more frequent on my channel than it has in the past. So we are going to join this review of the Survivor Series 1995, one of my favorite Survivor Series, by the way. We're going to join this review in progress. I went ahead and shaved off the first couple of minutes because I talked about some stuff that's just not relevant now. I talked about some upcoming videos and some current event stuff in the first couple of minutes of the original review, so I went ahead and cut that out, and we're going to join this review about 2 minutes in. So you guys sit back and relax, enjoy this review, let me know what you think, and hit me with your suggestions in the comments below. And as far as this one goes, I gotta be honest, I'm selfish. I chose 1995 as one of my reviews to do because I have a lot of personal memories of the show. It's one of my favorite Survivor Series of all time, and overall, it's widely considered not one of the best by most of the wrestling fans. When you hear people do reviews on the show or talk about it, it's not looked back on very fondly by the majority of the audience, but I was a pretty hardcore fan back in 1995, and you guys all know who've been listening to me over the years, I was a big Bret Hart fan, and so obviously this was going to be a really special night for me as well. But I remember watching this on pay-per-view and ordering it through my cable system. I remember going through the whole process, which was a pain in the ass back in 1995, but I remember watching it that night and have a lot of specific memories about the pay-per-view, so I thought it would be fun to come up here and share those with you. Survivor Series 1995 goes down on November 19th, 1995 in Washington, D.C., in the USA Arena. This was, I believe, the first Survivor Series that took place on a Sunday. All previous Survivor Series up until this point had either taken place on Thanksgiving night or on Thanksgiving Eve. So they had started to transition into the Sunday-only pay-per-view schedule, and I believe it would stay that way pretty much indefinitely, except for those random pay-per-views like Taboo Tuesdays and shit like that. So that's when they fully adopted the Sunday night pay-per-view show, and that was also when the pay-per-views really started creeping up. WWE and WCW were full-on in their Monday Night Wars. Nitro had only started a couple of months before then, but even prior to that, WCW was upping the amount of pay-per-views they would have every year, which caused WWE to create In Your House, and we were having those small 2-hour In Your House pay-per-views in between the big five. I actually like that format and wouldn't mind going back to it. I'm dreaming if I think WWE's ever going to go back to doing that, but I thought that format kind of worked, and I even thought back then in 1995 that what they were doing was way too much. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're literally going to have a pay-per-view a month? It seemed completely unheard of back then that was a possibility. Now it's completely the norm. Now, I mean, for a while during that one brand split, they were doing 2 a month, weren't they? So it amazes me how out of control shit got. And it all really started here in 1995. But like I said, this show isn't widely beloved by the fans really at all. Not too many people talk about it. A lot of people don't even mention it when they talk about the greatest Survivor Series of all time or the greatest pay-per-views of all time. This one's never even brought up. But we'll go through all the matches here, and I'll discuss some of the history and some of the angles that were going on between all the participants here, so you guys are not just watching this blind. So the show opens up with a wonderful surprise, and I remember when the pay-per-view started, they don't go to the open right away, they just cut right to the arena, and Howard Finkel says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Perfect." And the perfect music plays, the little entrance door opens up, and Mr. Perfect walks out down the aisle and makes his way to the ring, gives the camera a little wink, and then they go right into their kind of opening montage or their opening video package to start the show. Mr. Perfect was brought back in to be on commentary for this show. It was going to be Mr. Perfect, Vince McMahon, and Jim Ross. at the announce desk for this, and I was so happy to see Mr. Perfect back. I didn't see it coming. By then, I was a little bit into the behind-the-scenes news. I was a subscriber to The Observer, and I would listen to hotlines and shit like that, but I still wasn't aware that Mr. Perfect was coming back in. I guess it wasn't widely known, or at least at the time I didn't know about it, so I completely marked out. I was so happy because I was a huge Mr. Perfect fan, and I was sad to see him go. Didn't understand why he left to begin with. He left in late 93, and then he came back at WrestleMania 10 in 1994 to start an angle with Lex Luger, but it never got off the ground because Mr. Perfect left, and he would be gone for over a year until he would return here in late 95 at the Survivor Series. So I was just thrilled to see him back. I was hoping he would wrestle, but he never did. He would never wrestle again in the WWE. He would not get back in the ring until he went to WCW a couple of years later. But I enjoyed Perfect on commentary here. He was a lot of fun. He reminded me a little bit of Owen Hart at King of the Ring 1996. He had this strange kind of dry humor, and he had these funny one-liners, and he spent the entire pay-per-view putting himself over. I mean, he had to compare himself to every person that was in the ring, especially when we got to the wild card match later on and Shawn Michaels was in the ring. Perfect spent the whole time bashing Shawn and praising himself. It was actually quite funny. But he had a lot of funny, just little goofy things to say. Mr. Perfect was a master ribber, and I think he was fucking with Ross and Vince a lot. It was pretty fun. So if for no other reason, go back in the network and take a look at this show just to listen to Perfect on commentary. He's pretty entertaining. The opening match was a pretty fun affair between the Underdogs and the Body Donnas. We had the Underdogs team of Marty Jannetty, Bob Holly, Barry Horowitz, and Hakushi taking on the Body Donnas, the team of Skip, Rad Radford, Dr. Tom Pritchard, and the 1-2-3 Kid, who replaced Jean-Pierre Lafitte. I think Pierre was actually released from WWE or let go. Something happened around that time and he was gone from the company. So he was replaced by the 1-2-3 Kid, who they explained on TV purchased the spot from Pierre because the Kid was now with the $1 Million Man. He was now part of the $1 Million Corporation. He turned heel just days before this on Monday Night Raw when he was the referee in a match between Psycho Sid and Razor Ramon. And they were kind of teasing the tension between the Kid and Razor on TV. And it's funny, I don't really know the true story on this, but looking back, it makes me think that WWE kind of changed their mind and they were about to put the Intercontinental title on Sid, and then they decided not to at the last minute because the match on Raw was initially supposed to be an IC title match between Razor and Sid with the Kid as the referee, and that's what was advertised. And then at the last minute, the president, Gorilla Monsoon, announced that the match would be a non-title match because he doesn't trust the Kid to not screw over his friend, Razor Ramon. And that's exactly what happened. 1-2-3 Kid fucked over Razor in the match, turned heel, fast countered him when Sid had him down, and Sid won the match, but not the title. And I think maybe the original plan might have been to put the IC belt on Sid so he can go on an IC run and then Razor can feud with the Kid, but instead they went back on it. I'm not really sure what the internal story there is, but it's something that I always look back at with suspicion because it looked like the writing was on the wall there for Razor and we were going to get a title run by Sid. But there was a lot of funny moments during this because when the Kid was announced as a surprise as the final member of the Body Donnas, Razor tried to come to the ring and try to get to him, but he was held back by security. So instead, he's forced to go backstage, and throughout the match, they kept doing these cuts to the back where Razor is shown sitting in the locker room watching the match on the monitor. But surrounding him is the entire faction of the fucking BSK. And I thought it was so funny to see one of the primary Clique members sitting there in between Fatu, Henry Godwin, and Savio Vega. Just got a huge kick out of that for some reason. But the opening match was pretty fun. I mean, we had a lot of pretty good talent in there and a lot of high flyers, and it was a pretty action-packed match, probably the proper match of all of these to open with. Interesting note here, too, on the 1-2-3 Kid, he was actually on opposite sides of two of his former tag team championship partners. He held the tag team titles with both Marty Jannetty and Bob Holly in the past, so that was kind of interesting. And also, over on the Body Donna side, you had Dr. Tom Pritchard, who still at this time was a member of the Heavenly Bodies, but just a few weeks after this, they would shave his head, dye him blonde, dress him up in the Body Donna's outfit, and he would become Zip to team up with Skip, and they would eventually win the tag team titles, I think, the next year. So kind of weird to see Tom Pritchard in there teaming with Skip, but he hadn't been, fully transformed into Zip yet. And oh my God, I still can't believe they did that. And Dr. Tom, ironically, would be the first one eliminated in this. He would get pinned by Bob Holly after a high cross body off the top rope. Holly would then immediately be rolled up and pinned by Chris Candido. And then we would get Hakushi in the ring for a little while. He would mix it up with Candido. And I really miss Hakushi. I loved him during this time in the WWE when they brought him in. You know, the roster, the way it was at that time in like 1995, Hakushi was somebody that they really needed. I remember when he came on the roster, Bret, I think, was the first one to speak up and say, give me this fucking guy. I want to have some matches with him, because Hakushi, I think, worked with Bret right out of the gate. Upon entering the company just a couple of months later, he's working with Bret on pay-per-view. So I think everybody could see the potential and the skills of Hakushi, but unfortunately, he never really went too far. He was only there, God, I don't know, maybe a year. And he went on to be a very, very successful wrestler. I just wish his run in WWE would have been a little bit longer. There was a really funny spot, too, when he's wrestling with Candido, where Candido takes kind of a funny face bump after a Hurricane Rana. He's got Hakushi up on the top rope, or on the top turnbuckle, hits him with the Hurricane Rana, and Candido stands up and lifts his hand up in the air and kind of does the flare thing and just takes a flat face bump right on the mat, pops the crowd with laughter. That was pretty funny. Got a big kick out of that. Rad Radford, ironically, would wind up eliminating Hakushi, and Rad Radford looked pretty impressive in this, too. I mean, Louis Spicolli was a great worker, and it's such a tragedy what wound up happening to him, because he had ability in there, and I think he could have gone on to be a decent-sized star. He was never going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin or anything like that, but he was a solid worker. He wound up eliminating Hakushi after the 1-2-3 Kid kicked Hakushi in the back of the head, and Radford got the pin there, so Hakushi is out. Barry Horowitz would then pin Rad Radford with a roll-up when Radford was doing some showboating, I believe, and then the 1-2-3 Kid would pin Barry Horowitz after a leg drop. And that would leave Skip and the 1-2-3 Kid taking on Marty Jannetty. And in the craziest fucking spot probably in the whole night, and this is even including an amazing main event, vicious brawl that we would see later between Bret and Diesel, still, the spot of the night has to go to Chris Candido and Marty Jannetty. Marty eliminates Skip after a top rope power bomb. And I remember watching this on TV. I had never seen anything like a top rope power bomb before in my life, because all we had ever seen is the jackknife and Sid's power bomb. I mean, hell, Vader wasn't even in the company yet to be power bombing motherfuckers. So we didn't even see power bombs that much at all, much less two guys standing on the top rope. And just an unbelievably scary, dangerous, crazy fucking spot that I can't believe they did. It came out of nowhere. You see him up on the top rope and you're like, what are they doing? And then Marty hits Skip with that power bomb. Unreal. Gets the pin, obviously. Nobody's getting up from that shit. Skip is out of there, leaving Marty Jannetty and the 1-2-3 Kid as the final two. And as expected, I remember the whole match saying to myself, the Kid is going to survive. I didn't know if he was going to be the sole survivor or not, but you knew 100% fresh off a heel turn that he was going to win this match. And he did. He did get a little bit of help from Sid in this match. Sid showed up. It was kind of funny how Sid was able to just walk down to the ring completely unobstructed, where Razor was being held off by officials and wouldn't be let anywhere near the ring. $1 Million Man gets up on the apron to distract the referee. Sid jumps up on the apron and grabs Marty Jannetty and clotheslines him on the top rope, allowing the 1-2-3 Kid to get the pin and be the sole survivor in that match and celebrate with Psycho Sid. So pretty good opening match there. Pretty good storytelling with 1-2-3 Kid. They cut back to Razor Ramon again with the BSK guys, and Razor is now furious. He actually picks up the television monitor and slams it up against the wall, so he's flipping out. And, they would carry this on all the way until around February in that in-your-house diaper match where the whole thing would be blown off. And then a couple of months after that, the 1-2-3 Kid would be gone. So imagine that. He has that long run in the WWE as a babyface. He turns heel in November, and by, I don't know, April, May, something like that the next year, 6 months later, he's gone in WCW. He would be there just shortly after Hall and Nash would arrive. So that heel turn, even though I thought it was cool and give 1-2-3 Kid something to do, it never even got off the ground. He never did anything. I thought he could have a run as a singles, maybe with the IC title or something like that. But instead, he went the opposite direction and, wound up a member of the NWO just months later. The next match we have, I'm not going to spend too much time on, because as much as I enjoyed Survivor Series 1995, I did not enjoy the women's match. I believe this was the first time they had done a women's match since the first ever Survivor Series, which was a lot of fun. That was with the Glamour Girls and the Jumping Bomb Angels back in '87. That was fun shit. And there was some good stuff in this women's match too, but the women's division was really a mess. The women's division had one person on the roster. Really that's, well, maybe 2 if you count Bertha Faye. But Alundra Blaze was there. She was champion. And really all they did is they used her as kind of the middleman to bring in all the talent she worked with in Japan and kind of create their own women's division. But really they would only have 1 or 2 women under contract. I think they had Bull Nakano for a while, and then Bertha Faye, and then Alundra Blaze. But other than that, it was just, girls were being brought in from Japan just for shots, and that was it. So Alundra Blaze is captaining one team, and Bertha Faye is captaining another. And you guys know me, I'm not even going to attempt the pronunciations of these names because I don't want to disrespect any of these ladies. But the match was very clunky. It was just clunky and funny, and there was a few botched finishes. A couple of the eliminations, it looked like the referee was confused. You had people trying to break up the 3 count when they shouldn't have been. People were kicking out when they shouldn't, and it was just all fucking over the place, and it was kind of an ugly match. But there was still a pretty decent showcase of what some of this talent could do, and Bertha Faye was one of my least favorite wrestlers in WWE because she was a badass. She was Rhonda Singh, and even when they brought her in, I even tried to look it up online because I couldn't remember. I swear to God, when they first brought in Bertha Faye to the WWE, she was either going by Rhonda Singh or going by something else. She wasn't Bertha Faye right away. Unless this is some kind of a Mandela effect thing and it never really happened, I swear I remember her coming in as Rhonda Singh and then transforming into Bertha Faye, kind of the way the one-man gang transformed into Akeem. That's just what I remember in my head. But I tried to look it up and see what WWE called her when she debuted, and Wikipedia and other places like that are saying that she came in as Bertha Faye. But I fucking swear, she started out either as Rhonda Singh or as somebody else. But Alundra Blaze was treated much like Hulk Hogan, as they just lined up one heel after another for her. She had the feud the previous year with Bull Nakano, even dropped the belt to her and then won it back. Then she had the feud with Bertha Faye and dropped the belt to her and then won it back. Now she's going into Survivor Series as women's champion, and they're setting up a new opponent for her, Aja Kong, who's on the other team, and she would be the sole survivor. The final 2 in this match would be Aja Kong and Alundra Blaze. Aja pins her with kind of a spinning backhand move, catches her right in the face, and gets the 3 count and the victory, and she survives here. And I believe that was all done to set up a potential one-on-one match for the title, probably at the Royal Rumble, between Aja Kong and Alundra Blaze. But that would never happen because I believe in December, or right before the end of the year, they would release Alundra Blaze and just do away with the women's division entirely. And then, of course, we all know what would happen next. WWE never told Alundra Blaze to send the belt back, so she wound up debuting on Nitro as her original wrestling persona, Medusa, and dump the WWE Women's title in the trash live on Nitro, which would get her completely blackballed from the WWE for many years until she would go into the Hall of Fame. And we're just a couple of weeks away, or a couple of days away, I should say, from WWE's Evolution pay-per-view, and she's going to be making an appearance in the Battle Royal on that show. So she's really come full circle, putting that belt in the trash and then taking it back out at the Hall of Fame. And here she's actually going to be working a match in 2018, so that's pretty crazy. But all in all, the match was kind of forgettable. That's why I did not want to spend too much time on it. They did a lot of segments in between the matches where they had Todd Pettengill in the audience with a President Bill Clinton lookalike. They had this guy all over TV back then, and he did a really good job because not only did he look like him facially, but he sounded exactly like him. So this was a pretty good impersonator. But the whole thing is just weird. I don't know why WWE does shit like this. I guess they're just playing into the whole Washington, D.C. thing, so they're having the president there, and I guess he's first kind of shown during the entrance of Bam Bam Bigelow because he's taking on Goldust in a one-on-one match, and Bam Bam's pyro goes off and the Secret Service dives on top of him. Hey, get down, get down. They think it's an assassination attempt. Kind of not sure how I feel about that, but it is what it is. And he would be shown a couple of times during the night. He would be shown again with Bob Backlund in this hilarious exchange where Backlund is talking to him, and trying to recite some fucking line that was obviously written for him by Vince McMahon, because he screws it up and botches the line. And he's talking to the president, and he says something like, "Are you one of the irrelevant 8,000 government employees?" or something like that. And Vince McMahon, you can tell, is like losing it on commentary because he's trying to chime in and correct Bob Backlund's line, basically giving away that he knows what Bob was supposed to say, and he's trying to let the audience know. Vince just sounded frustrated because Bob isn't that great of a promo. He's kind of all over the place, and he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. So when the segment was over, Vince still couldn't let it go, and he goes, Bob Backlund meant to say 800,000, not 8,000, but who's counting or whatever. So Vince tried to play it off, but it was so hilarious that he was making it so obvious that was so ridiculously scripted. And when Bob got it wrong, Vince was sure to correct him. But it would get funnier later on when Sonny would be sitting in the president's lap and he's eating popcorn and he says something about watching a perfect match while he's staring at Sonny's tits. And then later on, he asks her if she'd be available for a cabinet position and if she would like to stop by the White House later to go over those positions. So I thought that was really funny. They were starting to use Sonny more in that, diva model eye candy role. Prior to this, she was only accompanying Skip to the ring, which incidentally, she did great on the mic because in that opening match, she announced the entire Body Donna's team on the mic. And even back then, a young Sonny who was still relatively inexperienced, just had a little bit of experience in Smoky Mountain before she came in. She was very young. She handled herself so well on the microphone. I was amazed. So kudos to a young Sonny back then. I don't know if I was in your position at that age, I'd be a stumbling, bumbling mess on the mic, and she looked like she knew exactly what she was doing out there. But the whole President Clinton segments were kind of funny but kind of dumb all at the same time. And like I said, next we got a big one-on-one match between Goldust and Bam Bam Bigelow. Goldust had just come into the company. He debuted at the In Your House prior to this against Marty Jannetty, so this was only his second pay-per-view match in the company at this point, where on the opposite side, Bam Bam Bigelow was on his way out. As a matter of fact, I do not remember seeing Bam Bam Bigelow after this show. This very well might have been his last match in WWE, unless he worked, a couple of live events before, leaving the company. He would then go on to ECW and then WCW. But Bam Bam had a lot of issues with the Clique. A lot of guys had issues with the Clique back then, and I think that was kind of what led to Bam Bam's downfall. His babyface run didn't last very long. He was a heel at WrestleMania. He main evented WrestleMania that same year against Lawrence Taylor. 7 months later, he's out of the WWE. The match was pretty much just designed to get Goldust over. He needed a big win against a big quality opponent, which Bam Bam was, and the match was pretty good. I mean, Dustin can go. So can Bam Bam. And the matchup was pretty decent. It went about, I think, 12 minutes. But really, at that time, I remember watching the show, not thinking for 1 second that Bam Bam was going to win. I knew he was on his way out. You could tell. He wasn't doing anything. He was involved in just shit angles. You barely even knew he was there. And his babyface run was, never going to go anywhere with the Clique in charge. He was even teaming with Diesel in the main event of King of the Ring that year, too. So he had some big matches and he had some pay-per-view main events, but it went rapidly downhill for Bam Bam right after that. And this was going to be the end of him. But Goldust, this was kind of the beginning. Can you believe that? It's been, 23 years? This is the 23-year anniversary of Goldust's debut, and he's still popping up from time to time on WWE TV. Incredible. The next match was fun. It was the Dark Side versus the Royals. The Royals team consisted of Jerry Lawler, King Mabel, Triple H, and Isaac Yankem, taking on the Dark Side, the team of Henry Godwinn, Savio Vega, Fatu, and The Undertaker. Now, The Undertaker had been off of TV for a while because he had his orbital bone, or face, crushed in by Mabel on an episode of Monday Night Raw. It was a six-man match with Shawn Diesel and Taker versus Mabel, Yoko, and I forget who else. I think Davey Boy. And I'm pretty sure Yoko's team won that match because they were setting up the Davey Boy Diesel match at In Your House. I think Diesel got the pin there. But after the match, Yoko and Mabel took turns leg dropping The Undertaker. And I guess Mabel had hit one of his leg drops wrong and cracked The Undertaker's skull. So he was out of action for a while. And he came back here, made his return at the Survivor Series with that white mask that he wore for a short time. And I remember, when he was coming to the ring watching it, you could tell something was on his face. But I didn't know it was something that he was always going to wear and he was going to wrestle in. I thought it was just maybe a new look for him. And I really liked Mabel being creeped out because Mabel was so hilarious. I used to love it when he would say, "I'm the king," to the audience and hold up his crown. Mabel was, kind of hot at that time. They had him win the King of the Ring. And as a matter of fact, during the King of the Ring that year, on his way to the crown, he actually defeated The Undertaker. It was one of the first times we'd ever seen The Undertaker pinned on pay-per-view like that. And Mabel did it. He went on to challenge Diesel at SummerSlam for the WWE title, but would fall short. And now he's in a program with The Undertaker. And Taker comes back, gets in the ring, takes his hat off, and the look on Mabel's face was utter terror. I loved it. Mabel was very good and very expressive, in the way he displayed his fear of The Undertaker. Some guys were really good at it because a lot of people who had to wrestle The Undertaker, the Yokozuna comes to mind as another guy that was really good at just being scared shitless of The Undertaker, and Mabel played it off well. And what I liked about this match is it was all Undertaker. It went on for about 15 minutes, with all the guys wrestling each other, but the whole time there's no eliminations and the Undertaker never gets in the ring. He finally gets in the ring when Savio Vega, in a hilarious spot, Savio blocks a pile driver from Jerry Lawler, puts his hands right down on the mat, looks at Jerry Lawler, gets up and slaps the Undertaker's hand, and he's tagged in, and Jerry Lawler is shitting his pants. Next thing you know, Jerry Lawler eats a tombstone and is pinned. Then Isaac Yankem, who would later become Kane, of course, eats a tombstone and is pinned. Triple H gets a choke slam over the top rope and is also pinned. And then Undertaker is attacked by Mabel from behind. Mabel gets him on the mat, and then the Undertaker does a sit-up right when Mabel is dancing. Mabel shits his pants, dives out of the ring, and fucking runs away. Pushes the cameraman out of the way. You know what it reminded me of? Because I'm a big Seinfeld fan. Have you ever seen the episode where George is like at his girlfriend's house or something, and it's a kid's party? There's a bunch of kids there, and his girlfriend's grandmother and some old ladies, and the kitchen sets on fire, and George flips, and he's running towards the door, pushing over kids, stepping on old ladies, doing everything he can to get the fuck out of there. And that's what Mabel was pretty much doing. He gets counted out, and the entire team of the Dark Side wins the match. So there's only been a few times in history, I think, that the entire team has survived, and this was one of them. Pretty fun affair. Next up, we had a match that I also really liked. I have fond memories of this wild card match. WWE was trying new things back then, and this is one of the only times this match reminds me of 1990 when they did the final match of Survival, and they tried that. It was the only time that was ever done, and this is the only time I believe the wild card match was ever done too. Gorilla Monsoon made the match on TV, and he was just going to randomly pick guys, baby faces and heels, mix them together, and make 2 teams of 4. And the teams were, on one side, you had Yokozuna and Owen Hart teaming up with Scott Hall and Dean Douglas, 2 guys who had been feuding at the time, and then Owen and Yoko were together in Camp Cornette. They were taking on the team of the British Bulldog, who is now against Yoko and Owen, Shawn Michaels, Psycho Sid, and Ahmed Johnson, who was making his debut. So you had a couple of heels and faces on each side there. Some guys who were feuding were on the same side. Shawn and Sid had an issue just a few months prior to this. Bulldog and Shawn would go on to have their problems. Scott Hall and Dean Douglas. And then you had, 3 guys managed by the same guy, Yoko and Owen on one side, Bulldog on the other, all managed by Jim Cornette. He was appearing in both teams' locker rooms earlier on in the night in pre-match interviews, so he really wasn't sure where his alliance was going to be, but he did accompany the British Bulldog to the ring, and he would primarily be in the team of Bulldog, Ahmed, Sid, and Shawn. A lot of fun stuff in this match. Dean Douglas got eliminated first by Shawn Michaels after a roll-up. When he got punched in the face by his own partner, Scott Hall, there was a little bit of miscommunication there, and Hall wound up nailing Dean in the face, and he got rolled up by Michaels. The British Bulldog and Owen Hart would mix it up as well. That was fun to see them go at it a little bit, especially both guys being heel and trying to cheap shot each other. I enjoyed that. Razor and Shawn would also mix it up a little bit. They're both baby faces. Of course, just a couple of months prior to this, at SummerSlam, they had the big ladder match for the IC title, but they're click buddies, but they go at it a little bit too. And Razor Ramon would wind up pinning Sid in a hilarious spot. Sid is holding Razor for Shawn to get in the ring and super kick, and Razor ducks, and Shawn nails Sid right in the face and gives absolutely zero fucks about it. Hilarious. Kind of shrugs his shoulders and walks away, and then Razor is able to pin Sid. After the pin, Sid grabs a hold of Shawn and power bombs him on his way out of the ring. And that was kind of a theme here in this match with Shawn Michaels taking so much punishment. Ahmed Johnson would next eliminate Owen Hart, debuting his new finisher, the Pearl River Plunge, and it was really cool when he hit that. Jim Ross yells out, "Tiger Bomb," which I fucking loved. Razor Ramon would wind up getting pinned by the British Bulldog when the Kid and Psycho Sid show back up to distract Razor Ramon, and that's when Bulldog is able to grab him, hit him with the power slam, and eliminate him. And then later on, Ahmed Johnson would body slam Yokozuna. I believe he did this in his debut when he showed up on Monday Night Raw. Slammed Yokozuna, which is pretty impressive, even though he didn't really get him off the ground very far. It was still pretty crazy to see Ahmed lift up this big guy. And for some reason, British Bulldog stops the pin. He stops the victory. That would have been it for Yoko. But Bulldog then interrupts the pin. Shawn Michaels and Ahmed deck Bulldog, knock him down. Shawn then hits Yoko with the super kick, and Ahmed bounces off the ropes and nails him with a big splash and gets the pin. And those are your 3 survivors: Ahmed Johnson, Shawn Michaels, and the British Bulldog. They were really putting over Ahmed Johnson huge here. I think WWE at that time had a lot of big plans for Ahmed. I thought the guy was going to be great. I mean, when he showed up, he was so fucking big. And you know how Vince loves big guys, and Ahmed would go on a pretty decent run. The first 7 months of his career were fabulous. He won the Intercontinental title. You know, he was seen as a top guy. Then he got injured, and it was all downhill, and a couple of years later, he was gone. But the initial potential, I think, in Ahmed was very, very big, and I think WWE had plans to even make him the man at one point. But that would never come to be, and it's a shame. But I thought the match was really fun. It was different. Not sure why they didn't do it again. Might have been fun to see this in 1996 or maybe even in 1997, considering how bad some of those elimination matches were. But we never really saw it again, but I enjoyed it. I remember watching it that night and really liked the dynamic between everybody. There was also the story with Shawn making his return because previously, at the last pay-per-view, he had to forfeit the Intercontinental title to Dean Douglas when he was attacked by those Marines in Syracuse. So this was his first time back from that concussion, and he took a shit ton of punishment in this match. And the very next night, on Monday Night Raw, is where they would do the angle with Shawn Michaels and Owen Hart. He would have a one-on-one match with Owen in the main event. Owen would hit him with an enziguri. Shawn would go down and not get up. And that's when Vince took his headset off and got in the ring, and they went to commercial. I mean, it felt very real. It was not sold the way most works are sold, and you really felt like it could potentially be real, especially with Vince and the commentary team just going silent and getting in the ring. And then when they come back from commercial, you know, the EMTs are in the ring and they're, you know, wheeling Shawn away. Fans are in the audience crying, and it was crazy. And that would be the last time Shawn would be in the ring until the Royal Rumble, when he would make his return and be on his road to win the title against Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12. So that was all kind of started right here. And next up, we get the main event. My God, this one was fun. One of my favorite pay-per-view main events ever. And it was a very different main event for this time. You know, if you're a young fan looking at this match through 2018 eyes, you might not understand what's so great about it. But at this time, you did not see a lot of this stuff in the WWE. They made this match a no disqualification match because Bret and Diesel had faced 2 times prior to this in the last year or so at King of the Ring 94 and at Royal Rumble 1995. Both matches kind of had non-finishes. Bret was DQ'd, I think, in 94, and then it was a double DQ or the match was just thrown out, no contest, something like that, at the Royal Rumble 1995. So to ensure there's going to be a winner this time, it's going to be no disqualification, which means the guys can do whatever they want. And I remember, you know, sitting down, I knew this was going to be it. I knew Bret Hart was going to win this match that night because prior to this, Diesel had held the belt for about a year at this point, and when Gorilla Monsoon randomly came on TV, I think it was on a Monday Night Raw, and it was maybe in September, it was early fall, and I didn't even see it coming because Bret Hart was feuding with everybody else. He was doing Kiss My Foot matches with Lawler and feuding with Jean-Pierre Lafitte and Hakushi and all these random fucking guys, and I was getting frustrated because I was like, when is Bret going to be back in the title picture? And then lo and behold, one night on Monday Night Raw, Gorilla Monsoon is being interviewed in the aisleway, and he just announces that Bret Hart is going to face the winner of the Diesel Bulldog match or something like that at Survivor Series. And I'm like, that's nice. We just got the announcement. I didn't see it coming. I was so happy, and I'm like, that's it. Bret's going to win the title. Diesel survives Bulldog. He goes into Survivor Series to face Bret Hart. It's a babyface match, but not really. Both of these guys are hell-bent on killing each other. I loved Bret's ring gear. I remember watching it when he came down to the ring. I'm like, wow, he's wearing all pink, which he had not really done. I had not seen Bret wear that type of ring attire since maybe when he beat Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8. So I just liked the fact that he was all in pink and it just looked awesome and it was his night. I knew it was going to be his fucking night. The match starts off pretty brutal. Diesel is in control for a very large portion of the beginning because he's the bigger, stronger guy. It was interesting too, right before the bell rang, both guys tried to out-psych each other by taking off the turnbuckle pad. I think Diesel just took off the top pad first, and then Bret was like, all right, fine. He turns around and takes his off. So both guys are like, yeah, let's bring it on. And Diesel beats the hell out of Bret pretty hard. I mean, just pummeling him and pounding him in the ring, gets him on the outside of the ring, throws him into the ring steps, uses a chair on Bret, just beating the shit out of him. And Bret takes all of this punishment until finally he's able to mount some sort of a comeback. He winds up biting Diesel to gain control of the match, and then just goes to work on Diesel's leg hard. And I mean hard. Bret is just relentless and brutal, and it was awesome. I liked this match because it wasn't a classic Bret Hart match with a lot of great wrestling and suplexes and moves and shit like that. It was just a brawl. And it was a great brawl. I mean, it was a fucking beautiful brawl. And the way Bret is just destroying Diesel's leg, just in the ring alone, was pretty vicious. And then he gets nuts. He rams Diesel's leg into the ring post. He's got him kind of grapevined in the ring post, you know, kind of in position to do the ring post figure 4, although Bret wasn't doing that move at this time. But when Diesel is over in the corner there, Bret grabs one of the electrical cables or something from the cameras and starts tying Diesel's leg to the ring post so he can't get away, and then grabs a chair and starts nailing Diesel with the chair, hits him on the back first, and then just goes to work on his leg. He's taking the chair, you know, top side down vertically and ramming it right into the knee joint of Diesel. And it was a great call by Hennig. And he screams out, "I've never seen Bret Hart so vicious in my life." And it was just such a perfect storytelling call there by Hennig. And the announcers are freaking out. Even the fans are like, holy shit, Bret Hart is fucking vicious. And Bret showed signs of this back at the Royal Rumble in 1995 when it was even more of a babyface match than this is. Bret kind of used some heel tactics in that match, even used a chair on Diesel and got away with it in that Royal Rumble match. But here it's all legal, and Bret was just fucking vicious with that chair. Diesel would finally regain control of the match for a little while, and then Bret would mount a small comeback, so you got a little bit of a seesaw thing going on, and Diesel is on the outside of the ring, and then Bret goes for a top rope dive onto Diesel but misses, lands on the floor. Diesel gets back in the ring, and as Bret is recuperating on the outside of the ring, he's walking around the ring to get back up on the apron to get back in the ring, and as soon as he's standing, Diesel then nails him and launches him off the apron through the Spanish announce table, which was, I believe, the first time we had ever seen a table bump like this in WWE, and it caught me completely off guard. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? It was so perfect. And, you know, you look at this now, like I said, with 2018 eyes, a young wrestling fan is probably going to look at that table bump and say, oh, who cares? What's the big deal? They do that 9 times a night now on the independent circuit. But back then, this was different. You saw it in ECW a little bit, but this was still 1995. And the way Bret took that table bump, it was perfect. Landed right in the dead center of the table. It splits right in half. Monitors fly up in the air. Hugo and whoever else was with him doing commentary fell out of their chairs. Bret sold it like $1 million. He looked like he had been killed. He looked like he'd been shot in the fucking head, completely lifeless, motionless, laying there in that broken table. Diesel then goes to retrieve him, grabs Bret. Bret is just dead weight. He's just completely, virtually unconscious, and Diesel lugs him back into the ring, and he's trying to pick up Bret for the powerbomb, for the jackknife, but he can't even really pick Bret up. He just slumps down, and I'm watching this, and I remember saying to myself, Bret's playing possum. You know, if Diesel knows who Bret Hart is, this is what he does, and I even called the finish. I swear to God, I'm not lying to you. I said, Bret's going to small package him right here, and Diesel kind of slowly picks up Bret one more time to try to get him up, and that's when Bret hooks him right in the small package. The referee goes 1, 2, 3, and the hilarious reaction by Diesel after he gets pinned, and he screams out, motherfucker, visibly frustrated because the story here from the announcers was that Diesel was having compassion. Mr. Perfect kept saying it over and over. He goes, am I seeing compassion for Bret Hart from Diesel? He looks like he doesn't want to hurt him. He doesn't want to go through with the beating anymore. You know, Bret's virtually dead from that table spot. Diesel has remorse. Diesel has compassion, and that cost him. Bret rolled him up, caught him with a quick pin, won the WWE title, and that's when Diesel snaps. He gets right back up, shoves the referee out of the way, picks Bret up and nails him with a power bomb. And then a bunch of referees swarm the ring. Diesel starts beating the shit out of all of them, punching them and leaving them all laying in the middle of the ring, picking Bret Hart up again and jackknifing him a second time, and then grabbing the WWE title and dropping it right on Bret and looking into the camera, and he starts going, I'm back, and he would leave the ring and the show would go off the air. And that would lead to the great promo that Diesel would have the next night on Raw, the same night Shawn would be injured in that main event. Diesel came out and cut a promo in street clothes out on Raw in front of the announce desk, talking about how when he was champion he was miserable and he was no longer able to be the ass-kicking badass monster that he was. WWE wanted him to smile and be more corporate and be more fan-friendly, and he fucking hated it. And it was one of the first times ever that Vince was kind of hinted as being the owner, because Diesel was kind of talking to him. He was dropping some hints, and it was the very first kind of tweener character too. You know, you look at what Stone Cold Steve Austin became and how his career started, and when he got hot in 96, 97, he was that in-between. Diesel was a lot like this. he was a heel, but he was also saying, hey, if you're wearing a black glove, I'll slap your hand, but you got to be on my side. If you're not with me, you're against me kind of thing. And I liked it. So it was something good to do with Diesel. It's a shame that Diesel would wind up giving his notice 3 months later, because I think heel Diesel could have gone on a run. Heel Diesel could have been champion again. All they had to do was have Shawn beat Bret at WrestleMania and then maybe face Diesel at SummerSlam in 96, and heel Diesel beat Shawn for the title. Why not? They could have done a lot with the heel Diesel. So it's a shame that we didn't get much of that. But looking back here to the end of Diesel's run, it was impressive, man. He was only, I think, 5 or 6 days short of holding that belt for a year. And then Bret took it off of him. And the rest is history. So overall, I think the show was very good. I know I'm biased because I'm a Bret Hart fan. And, back then, my favorite wrestler won a world title in the main event. Naturally, I'm going to look back at this show very fondly. But I still think, just looking at it from the perspective of what wrestling was like in 1995 and how bad shit was, this pay-per-view was pretty good. I still don't think it's, one of the best ever or anything like that, but for me, I have very, very fond memories of this one. The show would also go off the air with a great closing video package. I loved it when they did this. I want to say this might have been one of the first pay-per-views they did this. They might have done it at SummerSlam, I don't remember, but tremendous editing, because the fact that they're in the truck editing this video package to air immediately when the pay-per-view goes off the air, they're putting that together pretty quick, and they were always a lot of fun. And I even liked the theme song for Survivor Series this year. They never used this one again, but it had a really catchy kind of pay-per-view theme song, and I really liked it, and I've never been able to find like a clean download of this song. So if anybody ever stumbles across the theme song to Survivor Series 1995, send it my way. I'd really appreciate it. So anyway, that's about it. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you very much for listening and taking this trip down memory lane with me. You guys know how I love to do this. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions and memories, if you have them, of Survivor Series 1995. And if you don't have any, take a look at the show and then come back and tell me what you think. So I will talk to you guys very soon. Take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, peace.